So allow me to introduce our friends of the show, recent friends of the show. To my left, we have Audrey Taylor, who is the president of Women in High Tech.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, see, I did it.
Stop it.
We've been talking about British accents here right before the show. So Darcy has a fantastic accent. We also have
I have a terrible accent.
Audrey. Darcy.
Dodry. Dodry, raise your hand. Anyone?
Anyone? Bueller? No.
But I would like to point out Darcy is the one with the accent, not me.
Let's hear the accent, Darcy.
I don't think I have an accent. I was raised in Michigan, so some people in Indiana think I have an accent, and I'm like, I don't hear it. But
Yes, she do. It's American.
American accent.
Well, she's the vice president of Women in High Tech. And to my right is Brittany Simpson, onboarding and outreach manager at Site Strategics. And thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us. Token man.
Token man. I'm Aaron Sparks, CEO of Site Strategics, as well as Token Man for Edge of Indy.
Token man.
That will be my wife's ringtone from now.
I will be calling you that moving forward. I hope that's okay.
No worries. All right. Well, ladies, thanks so much.
I move away.
No.
Blood circle right here.
More.
Women in High Tech was founded in 1999 in Indianapolis, Indiana, and is a nonprofit professional organization dedicated to supporting women in STEM industries. So first and foremost, for our listeners that aren't familiar with the acronym STEM, what's that stand for?
So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, or mathematics.
Yep. Now, there's a lot of programs. In fact, there's a very unique program that you did here just recently with Mayor Greg Ballard. But tell us more about STEM in the workplace and especially the track that women have in STEM, because it is huge. Correct?
Yeah, I think we've come a long way as far as women in STEM, but there is definitely a lot of data out there that shows that there's a long way still to go. Yeah. So, in STEM, men are employed at twice the rate of women. Women represent only about 10 to 30%, depending on the specific field of the workforce in high-tech occupations. So you're talking about systems analysts, aerospace engineers, and so forth.
Right.
And women in STEM occupations, on average, earn less than men. So there's a lot of factors that contribute to why girls don't engage in STEM, or why women drop out of STEM careers, or they drop out in college or in careers. One of those, just to give an example of young girls, is that girls lack confidence. So typically, like if a girl is struggling in a math class, she'll be like, I can't do this. And math is an important part of any STEM degree. And so they lack confidence. But there's a lot of reasons that surround that. And so we kind of take those things and say, well, how can we provide mentors for young girls? How can we help support women in their career so that when they're having challenges, if they have children and they're struggling with work-life balance or things like that,
Right.
How do we help support them to continue to retain women in STEM and promote them and celebrate them?
Now, seeing that I'm outnumbered here, we all know that women are smarter than men, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
See what I did there?
Tenfold.
Good job.
But I mean, those numbers are very challenging. They're very disturbing. You want to have this balance, obviously, and we're underserving women in these technological fields. So you've got a long-standing program of education, but you also have a lot of mentoring groups and a lot of different opportunities for reaching young women, young girls, to be able to introduce these career paths, right?
Yeah. A lot of times people will say that women have to work twice as hard to get the same results that a man gets. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. We hear every day, even last week, I heard something that just sort of blew my mind about a CEO, something he said to one of his project managers, that he wasn't really listening to her because she was a woman.
Oh, no.
And that was my reaction. And so we're still facing challenges like that daily with women. And our role at Women in High Tech is to, I was like, we will find you a new job, okay? We will get you out of there and find you somewhere that appreciates and values what you bring to your industry.
You're really trying to grab the Indianapolis youth, these young girls like you've touched on, and you've got two programs in particular, the Ignite Your Superpower, which we've talked about, we've had on a previous show, we've mentioned that one, as well as your Passport to High Tech. Can you touch on those and kind of why it's so important that you are trying to reach these younger girls?
Sure, I'll let Audrey touch on that.
So I think it is important that we reach young girls, but I want to be clear, our organisation supports the entire gamut of where women hit STEM. So starting the pipeline early is going to change the whole dynamic. And I think we're recognising that the younger kids come to it with a different approach, but making sure that they don't drift off, they don't start to deselect themselves from the team. So what we are proposing, what we provide through these opportunities through Ignite Your Superpower and then our Passport to High Tech, which is many years in existence, is the opportunity to provide women who have careers in STEM, who have already gone through the process. They did those STEM classes in school, then in college, then they've actually stuck at the career. So when you go to an event, both the boys and the girls see a woman in that role. So it's no longer a conceptual idea that you can be a scientist. It's she's a scientist and I can ask her questions about it and I can ask those questions. And it literally, if you can see it, you can model it and you can become it. And that's what we really believe, those opportunities exist for people and providing more and more ways for people to see women who've taken that path and how they can balance work life and have those successes.
It's conditioning the brain to see something new and then know that you can continue down that road. That makes total sense. Yeah.
Well, you have some scholarships available as well.
Yeah, so we have corporate sponsors who we're always grateful and delighted to have. So through our corporate sponsorship, 20% of the funds that they give, we put into scholarship funds. Excellent. So every year we allocate funds to undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees and award those to women in STEM careers here in Indiana. So we're investing. So we started with those K through 12 by showing them role models, and now we're investing through you in college in your undergraduate and your graduate degree so that you can come out at the end of the education process and become one of those role models.
Yeah, we also do high school. We give a little bit of money to NCWIT, which is the National Center for Women and Information Technology. Every year they do an aspiration award for high school age students, and we partner typically with Indy to give scholarships to those girls.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's very, very important. That bridge that you're representing there is not only connecting when they're young, when the girls are young and forming their career paths or understanding their choices, right?
Yeah.
But on top of that, staying with them, kind of walking with them in their path all the way through college. That's where that that's where that reinforcement. That was odd.
You got excited.
I
You love
did.
STEM. He's just all about STEM.
That's where that reinforcement came from. And it's very, very important to understand that these type of programs, and irrespective of particular genre, if there's a need, an organization needs to go into a long-term life cycle with individuals, right? And that's what your organization has been able to embrace and recognize, is that there's drop-off points. There's places where there's a lot of challenges that are sociological and cultural that you need to buttress against and be able to help them get through this, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's where mentoring is so powerful. And my personal relationship to the organization has always been through that. It's just an opportunity to be in a room full of amazing women who have either experienced your challenge and have some suggestions, or who maybe can't do anything other than to say, I hear your pain, but you can get through this. But we really are all about lifting each other up and then celebrating the successes across those fields. So, what's worked in an engineering background might be different than what's working in a manufacturing background at the moment.
Absolutely.
And I mean, tech, we hear that all the time about the challenges of that. But all these have a need to have a more diverse workforce with different ways of thinking. And I think that's why women need to be in these careers.
Well, and when I think back to so I'm 31. When I think back to grade school, when I was in grade school, I didn't know I could be in science, or I didn't know that math was important. Math was just math. I didn't know that was a path I could go down, because we weren't hearing that in the classroom, and we weren't hearing that from other adults. I mean, because there really weren't that many women in those fields when I was young. Right. So it's just so nice seeing, I talk about her all the time. My niece, who's 7, she really believes she can be a doctor and a scientist and an Olympian. And I'm like, yes, you can. Go do it.
The path is a little bit more clear, too. So thankfully, when I was growing up, my mom was a nurse, but, she came from a time when you were either a nurse or a teacher.
Right.
Yep.
And she felt very strongly that she wanted me to be I grew up in the 80s, so she wanted me to be a fiercely independent woman. She did a great job at that. And I remember she made me take summer math, and I hated her for it. But by the time I graduated high school, I had taken 2 years of calculus, and I went on to get 2 degrees in STEM fields. And, I can largely thank my mother for that and pushing me and encouraging me that I could do those things. But when I wasn't doing a great job, at math. She didn't just say, oh, well, you should try harder or hopefully the school will take care of it. She enrolled me in a summer math program and made me do it all summer long.
Well, so often I think when I was in school again, math, never my strong subject. And so there were times when it was like, just get through it. Not really go dig into it and figure it out and let's get you where you need to be.
Right.
But sometimes it's just get through it and then find what you're good at. And now you really can be good in math. You have all of these resources available. Go find a way to be good at math.
Yes. And I think specifically a lot of studies point at calculus 1. Calculus 1 being where girls hit the wall with STEM. And that really, you start getting into limits and you're like, well, I don't understand this. What is this rotating around? I have no idea. But once you get past limits, calculus really isn't that terrible, but a lot of women sort of hit that wall there, and you need that math foundation.
Yeah, you do.
But I think you also need the people who tell you to stay the course. It's too often made available to you an alternative choice versus stick the course. And I think that's why the organisation was founded. The two people who founded it, who were Dr. Georgia Miller from IUPUI and also Joyce Boyd Gustafson from Eli Lilly, they recognized when they were forming the organization 20 years ago that this needed to be addressed locally. We have, and I mean, they were right, we have a huge biosciences organization in town. We have a lot of opportunities to provide these careers here in town. And we needed to create a talent pool for it. So I think that's where it's important that we have people who saw what was necessary 20 years ago, put some disciplines in place, and then we found partner organizations to support us along that journey.
Well, there's also something else that I think we're not acknowledging or not pointing out is that there's a sociological change, a sociological challenge. And inside of education, you've got these pushbacks that unfortunately are pushing women out of the pursuit of science, right? So it's not only just that reinforcing agent that what you're doing in this program needs to change the education reaction that educators have. I mean, there needs to be a sociological change inside of the educators' environment.
Well, that's why I really like programs like Project Lead the Way. They're addressing boys and girls, but they're recognizing the need to change the way that they approach teaching kids about different concepts like engineering.
Right.
And they're getting in early, and the organization is educating educators, in order to get them in the school so they understand. And we've been asked to speak on panels before. I think is in Pike Township schools.
Yeah, Pike done a good job.
Where members of our board members and people in our organization go and talk to the teachers so that the teachers can speak the same language as their students so they understand what sort of things they're learning about. So there definitely is this really great change that I see happening. I think what you don't see happening is what people don't know they do. So you have this unconscious bias, right? Where, we experience it every day all the time, and I'm a little bit more sensitive to it and quick to call it out, So I have some friends who will say, well, this happened and this happened. I'm like, that is not acceptable. I don't understand, and it's really even challenging for women to acknowledge it sometimes too. So, we're getting to the point where we have a lot of things that we know that we can address, and we work on a lot of those things with women in high tech, doing modeling, making sure that, when we have a certain, demographic of children or girls that they see somebody that looks like them. Because, for children, sometimes that's what they need is like, you look like me. I could do your job, whether you're a woman or whether you're a woman of color. So that we've done a really good job with sort of addressing some of those things and really try to pay attention to where people are falling out. So one of the statistics that I think is amazing is that 1 in 5 women drop out of the workforce who are in STEM as opposed to 1 in 10. And that's a pretty big, broad thing. But as you can imagine, there are a lot of things that are different from men and women. Typically people would think, well, women can have children, right? And that might be one of the reasons they drop out, because sometimes STEM careers can be a lot more demanding, as far as the number of hours that you work, et cetera. And, women tend not to go back into the workforce. But there's a lot of data and statistics out there, and we try to not necessarily be talking about that all the time, but more providing the solutions. And I think the biggest thing that we do as an organization that is most impactful and meaningful for all of our members as well as our sponsors is create meaningful connections between people. Anybody that is in our organization or outside our organization, if there's a way that I can help, I help. If there's a way that anyone on our board can help, they do. And when I talk to people individually, because I'll frequently meet with people who are like, I want to learn more. And I'm like, I would love to tell you more about our organization. And, they're a product manager or a project manager inside an IT company. And at some point they want to be a chief information officer, or they want to, be a director of IT. And I'm like, oh, well, let me introduce you to these people. Yep. And they just are so astounded. They're like, really? I can meet this person? And I'm like, yeah. She would be happy to meet with you and help show you how she got there. And so being able to create connections between people, it's not just the support and celebration, which are also important, but being able to really move the needle individually for women.
Provide the roadmap. In a way. Yeah.
But that's happening organically. And one of our watchers on the Facebook Live broadcast asked, can you also help facilitate employment for these individuals once they've actually made it through these STEM classes and these STEM career reinforcement paths that they have? That's what we're talking about. You have this entire network of support post-graduate into the workforce space, right?
We have people who will literally sit through and go through resumes with you, go through structures with you, go through interviews, but also make recommendations of where might be a good fit for the skills you've got, the skills you want to get, where you've got deficits and how to go about addressing those deficits. There is a talent shortage in this state. So if we can connect the right people with the right opportunities and support them through it, there is opportunity for employment, definitely. And there are a significant number of our individual members who are looking to make career changes. And that's why they've come to the organization. They see like-minded people who are moving through the path that they want to take, and we help them through that journey.
Can you tell us about membership and what that process looks like, and all the different levels? And I mean, you've got a lot of flexibility there as well. And I want to make sure that everyone watching and listening knows all about how to become a part of this.
Yes.
So we have individual members that start off the process. So you just join as an individual. You get to go to all of our events. Our events are free or very low cost if you're a member. And all of those have purposeful times to make connections. There is always networking at our events because we do believe knowing each other is the best source to staying in touch. We then have corporate sponsors, and the corporate sponsors, so if you go to our website, you will see our corporate sponsors. If you work for one of those organizations, you are therefore a member of our organization, both male and female. We don't only allow women to join. We encourage men to become, because we all need allies to change.
Well, and we can't keep talking to each other about the things.
I was so thankful for that because, I've got a girl's name, and I thought that might be the ticket in. Now I can actually get in legitimately.
I'm not going to lie. You're probably going to be one of a very few. Like Jeff Ton often comes to our events, and there are a few, and we know who they are. And you will get called out, right? Because thank you to all of the women and the 5 men who are in the room.
the token men.
It is literally like how they have to remind them to say, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines at a certain famous race. We haven't had that many ladies at that race for very long. So we have to celebrate them. And that is literally what the men in the room are. We are very, very proud of every man that comes to our events because they will move the needle too.
See, forgive me, that pisses me off because, if we're not that.
No,
but
not that.
The sheer, easy. No, for the sheer fact that, you're trying to break down social bias and cultural bias and employment workplace bias, right? There's a need. Anybody that's got a head on their shoulders knows that there's a disparate scenario here. And businesses should be reaching out and be able to help guide and push back on this entire scenario.
Doesn't it blow your mind that some of these things are still said? My jaw drops just like I don't know what it is, but we're looking into some of that as well in our future programming, talking about how men can be better allies. There are some really great people in town like Julie Kratz with I think it's Pivot Point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who just released a new book called One, and it's about male allies. And, it's something that's very close to us as well, because we feel like you have to give people the tools they need to be successful. So you have to give the women the right things to say and the courage to have crucial conversations. You have to give people the right things to say, if they want to be a male ally and they want to stand up, like what is the right thing to say and how do you do that? So, those are definitely things that we are thinking about and having conversations about.
You literally have one of the watchers on the live cast, Dave Meeker, hashtagging male allies right there. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
come on, guys,
rally up. Step it up. Back to membership is that there's a lot of different areas and all the organization. Can you give a shout out to some of the corporate sponsors just to let everybody know who's helping you here in Indiana?
All of them in alphabetical order.
Go.
Oh my goodness.
And a British
Allison
accent.
Transmission.
Yes.
That's alphabetical so far.
Right.
Stop right there.
I'm going to go.
All of our sponsors can be found on our website as well.
Yeah, but I'm starting with the top. So we've got across the organisation, so I want to be clear, we have, I think to your point, our corporate sponsors recognise that they need that diverse workforce. So if you look, they are providing both programming for their female employees to help them stay in their journey in STEM. So I think that's why they support us. And back to our memberships, we also have collegiate sponsors because we're looking to do that lifelong engagement with us. So those people who are colleges that sponsor us, they also provide memberships for our organisation. And then we also have, if your college doesn't sponsor us, then we also have a college rate as well. So the college
It's like $20 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, our rates are really, I think that's something as compared to other organizations. It's $100 a year for individual membership, $150 if you want to do 2 years. So the rates are really reasonable. Our events, if we do have an event that costs a little more, so when we do an event at the IMS during race time, it's going to be $35 or $45, So it's very palatable and it's very easy if somebody is with an organization that doesn't sponsor us for them to be able to. It's also really great that sometimes individual members will come in and they'll start talking about us to their employer.
Which is my own journey through the organisation. So I wasn't born in the 80s, or I'm not 31, but it's different math process in England, so I'm very, 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 very young. So I was involved in the organisation as an individual member earlier on in my life in Indianapolis, and then I did the mom route and started a company, so some things have to give. So I drifted away from the organisation. When it was suggested that I re-engage, I now had a company with employees. It made far more sense to me that time in my life to actually bring the whole company to the organisation, because the programming we provide is really powerful. And I do encourage my male employees to go to the events. I think one of the things about unconscious biases, I think it's sometimes good to be the odd one out in the room. I think it makes you have an awareness of those other opportunities where some other person might be the odd person out in the room. So I think it is very important that all my team go to the events, and we never have a question about renewing it because somebody always learns something from one of the events that they attend.
And you publicly shame them if they don't.
Oh my God!
I would never do that.
No, you're absolutely right. And let me ask you one more quick question in the space of sponsorships and different memberships. Do you have the ability for companies to actually provide individual scholarships for women that are on their journey? I mean, literally, can you provide that level of education for individuals and be able to provide those goals?
Yeah, so we do offer scholarships, and we offer so in addition to the 20% of, if you're a corporate sponsor, in addition to the 20% that goes to the scholarships, we typically offer, we started this, I think, for the first time last year at our Leading Light Awards, where if, somebody wanted to sponsor the Leading Light Awards and not purchase a table and have to fill a table, some companies are rather small and, filling a table of 10 might not make sense to them. So we said, well, instead of filling a table, why don't you just give that directly to a scholarship? So in addition to the scholarships that we offer through our corporate partnerships, we offer people the ability to give scholarships. And we went beyond just graduate and undergraduate. We also did some technical training things, which are some things that we're starting to look a little bit more at as well, that, when women are reintroduced into the workforce through STEM, they might not always, it might be a certification they need to take their career to the next level. It might not necessarily be a degree, but I do want to mention that we do have scholarships open right now. So in the past, we had typically only done scholarships on Leading Light Award years, and this year is a non-Leading Light Award year, but we are happy to be able to have enough money to be able to give out some scholarships. So we have two $2,500 scholarships, one for graduate, one for undergraduate, for any woman pursuing a degree in STEM who intends to stay in Indiana upon graduation at a university in Indiana. And so that deadline is, I think, October 31st.
Yes, that's what I saw.
Yeah, so I would encourage, and people always ask, well, what about this or what about that, or I'm doing this, and we don't have like real specific guidelines because we just want to hear their story.
Sure.
If they have a compelling case, we don't want to put too many stringent guidelines on that. But we do have scholarships open right now that will be awarded at our holiday party in December.
And we'll be sure to share the link on the show notes and things as well.
What we would like to do is actually also mention some of the great volunteers that have added to your team. What is your volunteer process like? You want to give any shout outs to certain volunteers that have jumped in and have helped out this organization?
I think, but
In
most,
alphabetical
no, I'm
order.
not
Right. Backward, alphabetical.
Audrey. We'll start with Audrey for that one. Okay. So we post all our volunteer opportunities on all of our social media platforms. You don't have to be a member to volunteer. Often people volunteer as a way into finding out more about the organisation. I was out on Saturday at the Celebrate Science event at the State Fairgrounds. Had a fantastic time working with the volunteers at the table, but then also meeting the young people coming through and hearing their questions and their dialogue. So volunteering is definitely the best way into our organisation.
Yeah, and you can also subscribe to our emails that are sent out without being a member by going to our website. There's a subscribe button, and we're always looking to our membership because we feel like that's a great opportunity for them to engage, and organizations are always coming to us. So we're sort of like that central point of gathering point of, can you provide volunteers for this or that? And as board members, it comes to us first, and we typically try to be the ones that go. Like I just did the Eureka Exchange. I did Ignite Your Superpower as a superhero, and that was like herding cats. I was like, I got this. I have 2 kids. No, they were middle schoolers. It was a little different.
And there were 600 of them.
Yeah,
That's
I only
intense.
had 5, and I had it was challenging. But
Did you have wine that night?
I went home and slept. Yeah,
Literally 600 middle school girls armed with robots.
Armed with an array of technologies, not just robots. We gave them multiple ways into a STEM career.
See, I got a 14-year-old, and that scares me to begin with. And literally, I mean, what an incredible, empowering visual to be able to have all those girls there.
Yeah, and there are a lot of opportunities with our organization to engage in volunteering, and not only with outside causes, but also within, if we need a little bit of help with an executive women's forum, or we're actually starting to put the call out for some committees that we're starting, which I'm really, so next year will be a Leading Light Award year, and I will be the president that year, and we just put a call out for any members who are interested in being on a committee for that, because that's a big event and it takes a long time to plan. Also, we're starting some different committees. So there are also opportunities within that way. That's how I started. I said, I want to be more, I came to an event, I paid for my first one. I said, I want to get a little bit more involved. And they said, well, volunteer. So I volunteered for an executive women's forum where I helped hand out name badges, right? It doesn't sound very sexy, but I was able to meet and see who all of these women were and start to, really understand who the people were, and started volunteering at a lot of events. And then they asked me to chair the Leading Light Awards last year. So that was my foray into women in high tech, as I was the chair for that Leading Light Award.
Look how far you've come.
Right? In like 3 years. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, I just blew my own mind. Like that it wasn't a plan and an intention. I just was looking for a place where I felt like I belonged, right? So my background is in STEM, but I currently work in, I guess you could say, marketing. I manage an agency of creative writers called Metonymy Media. So
I know you.
You know me. And I
Tell Ryan hi for us.
Yeah, he said hello as well.
Cool.
Shout out Ryan.
Right? So, I really wanted to get back into my roots in STEM. So I have degrees in cognitive science and psychology. And I was just generally looking for, where do I feel like there's a really supportive organization where there are really great people. And I fell in love with women in high tech because I feel like I was one of those women. I chose to pursue marketing, right? I chose not to go to grad school. But what I didn't choose was not to pursue biochem, which is what I went to college for, because I had a really terrible male professor. And I was one of those women that, for whatever reason, fell out of that path. Thankfully, I still stayed in STEM degrees and really enjoyed that. But it was just a great organization, and the camaraderie, the ability to be able to easily, genuinely talk and engage with people. And, you could be sitting next to, I met Gail Farnsley, and I had no idea who she was. She was a great lady. And she's like, yeah, I used to be the CIO of Cummins. I'm a partner at Gartner now. And I was like, wow, just the ability to be able to socialize and network and be very genuine with other women who really care about you. They don't just care about your job or your work. They're like, how are your kids? And so I think that's something that we offer, that if there's a woman in STEM out there who's looking for an organization to try and sort of figure out her way in the world, or have some camaraderie, have some support, our organization is definitely a great
place. On top of that, and to wrap up, you also are looking for the leaders that are women in tech right now to give back.
Absolutely.
To be able to jump into a role there, whatever the volunteer role is, because that stewardship needs to be managed and be able to be given help, because we got to break this bias, we got to break this stigma, and it goes into education, it goes into the workplace, it goes into community, and that help needs to be there all the time.
Yeah.
So in that vein, we certainly want to give our listeners a full shout out to where they can find you. So on Twitter, it's Women and High Tech, Facebook, Women and High Tech, and Instagram, Women and High Tech, and website, womenandhightech.org.
Check plus.
That was
Can I
like,
say one thing on our website?
Yep.
We post our pictures and our email addresses. So any member of our board, any member of our emeritus board, so past board members, you can contact us directly. We are here to talk to the community here in town. We look forward to those engagements. If you've got an ask, we will try to find somebody who can answer your ask.
fantastic. Well,
You ladies are the nicest.
they are.
We are.
Well, we would certainly like to be able to help you from Site Strategics and what we can do from an Edge broadcast. So please let us know. Talk to Brittany and let's see what we can do as you have future events. We would love to be able to share that with the online community.
We do. We have a Leading Light Awards next October. So we have saved the date sort of for October. We're still nailing down the final details, but that's a huge event where we look for sponsors. We look for lots of different things. So yes,
We will connect.
We will absolutely connect. So final words to aspiring young ladies that want to go into the STEM and technology pursuits. What would you say to them?
They're highly paid jobs. You're a highly in-demand resource, and they offer flexibility if you stay the course. I'm a programmer, and I have been able to be a computer programmer for a long time.
All right. Fantastic. That is fantastic.
I'm laughing at him, not you. I'm sorry.
I know.
What?
We don't actually fist pump in England. We shake hands.
Very well.
I'm going to
Thanks,
fist pump
very
you.
well.
I'm going to fist pump you after your answer too. Go ahead.
Okay. I would simply say you can, because I think confidence is a big challenge for any young person, especially young girls. You know, you can do it.
High five. Yeah. You can.
Here.
You-
See? No, we're supposed to look each other in the eye.
All right.
All
Very
right.
good. All right.
Get
There
your,
it is.
get your etiquette lesson for the day.
Stop it.
All right. Well, check out all of the resources. We're going to have it on the show notes page at edgeofindy.com. And we
Thank you,
certainly
ladies.
appreciate the time.
Welcome. Thank you.
And applaud you for a very laudable pursuit. So keep it going. Keep the lights going. And as much as we can, we're going to give you some lift in the social space.
Thank
We're
you
going
very
to hit
much.
you up for that.
Yeah, you got it. No